Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman from Islamabad. Today, I was unable to reach to work because the red zone is blocked, so I'm conducting this particular program from my home. So, today, as we all know, we'll be talking about this very important issue. When we talk about the Kashmiri freedom struggle, obviously, there are certain names which immediately pop up in our mind, and one of those names is definitely of Yasin Malik. Yesterday, the court in India, that is NIA, National Investigative Agency's court, they convicted Yasin Malik, a known Hurriyat leader, and they sentenced him for life, along with rigorous punishment. This man is really very sick. He should be in the hospital. And all these charges which were framed against him was perhaps they were all false. This man was a true gentleman, a hardcore freedom fighter who was in fact tried on the basis of terrorism and terror funding, to be exact. Now, when you talk about the Human Rights Commission or other agencies working inside even India, when they raised this concern, they were immediately stopped from doing so. Because obviously, when we talk about the judiciary of India, that is totally under the control of their establishment. This man, who is a genuine freedom fighter, Yasin Malik, finally has been convicted in false allegations. And imagine this man is married, has a young little daughter who has hardly seen him. And this man has hardly seen that little child growing up. This is the most unfortunate part. But since we are running out of time, so I'll be very quick and I'll straight away introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio in Islamabad, Dr. Owais bin Wasi Saab. He is a known Kashmiri leader. Gentlemen, thank you very much, sir, for taking out time and talking to PTV World. And on the telephone line, we have another known Hurriyat leader, and he is the chairman of KIIR, Altaf, Hussain. Wani Saab, thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the telephone. And we'll also be talking to Dr. Talat Shabbir Saab. He's the director CPSC of ISSI, and he's also going to join us over the telephone. But let me put this first question to you, Dr. Owais bin Wasi Saab. The decision of this court, totally illegitimate. A man has been convicted for something he hasn't even done. Your take on that, sir?
Yes, you are quite right that this case against which this decision has been issued by the court, that is primarily a political motivated case, and on dubious charges. Yasin Malik was earlier convicted, and now the life imprisonment was awarded to the one of the great leaders, freedom fighters of Kashmir. I think that the allegations that they have been leveled against Yasin Malik, sedition and foreign funding and conspiracy and terrorist organization, they all are fabricated, they all are concocted. Because if we take the example of this sedition, being a traitor, so if we take that argument of Indian code, then all the Indian freedom fighters, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, and Bhagat Singh, Subhash Chandra Bose, they all could be termed as the traitors, and they all had committed, this sedition. When the similar allegation was leveled against Indian leading author Arundhati Roy, she wrote an article, appeared in the Hindu, and she said that if the sedition charges are leveled against me, the similar charges could be leveled against India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, because he was the person who in the United Nations pledged in the Assembly, in the Lok Sabha of India, also pledged to the people of Kashmir that there will be a plebiscite, there will be a referendum to ascertain the will and wish of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So you can understand that how, frivolous this charge is. The second one is, that is the foreign funding case. That is also recently, in the very recent past, there was a Kashmiri social activist. She was also convicted and she remained in prison for 5 years. She was arrested on the similar charges in
Now,
2008
the
under
most
prevention.
important question, sir, if you allow me, the most important question right now is the question related to his health. Yasin Malik, according to information which I have, I've had a word with his wife also some time back and with his family also. This man is really sick. He is suffering from so many diseases. He has the kidney issue, he has the liver problems, then he has these digestive issues. God knows what exactly this man has been fed in the last so many years, as long as he was in the prison. Now, I just want to know about the exact situation as far as human rights is concerned, because Wani Saab, this question is for you. And I want you to put light and shed light on this very important point, that a man who is so sick, can he be sent to such a jail with such a bad reputation? And I'm talking about jail, and you know the history of that particular one. Your take, Altaf and Wani Saab.
As Dr. Wasi was telling you about the past history, if Yasin is a traitor, then all the Indian leaders who fought for the freedom of India are traitors. But knowing the history of the Indian courts when it comes to the Kashmir, or the Indian authorities when it comes to the Kashmiri leaders, they don't take care of anything. They just want to suppress the people's will. They just want to suppress the freedom struggle of Kashmir. As we all know, Yasin has been facing a lot of ailments throughout his life. He was tortured when he was first arrested in 90s, and thereafter, Yasin, after his release in 1994, he started a very peaceful resistance against the Indians, as he told the court, if I was a terrorist, then why 7 of the Indian Prime Minister candidates who came to Srinagar to meet him, and the 2 of the Prime Ministers of India met him and discussed with him the issue of Kashmir. If he was a traitor, if he was a terrorist, then why he was issued a passport in a BJP regime and he traveled throughout the world. But the court has no answer to these questions. As we know, this was all concocted, this was all fabricated, the stage was set for this already.
I would like to put a question here, Wani Saab. I've also learned that more than 160 people separately have been also arrested, and they've been, they've been pushed. They have been pushed to that limit, and so many cases have been, in fact, filed against them, and such fabricated cases. I mean, I just want to know. I want to know one thing. Please, if you could tell me about that. When you talk about the Indian Public Safety Act, I mean, this is the charge that perhaps he was against the people, and especially post Pulwama incident. Now, this is what Indian media is reporting. Now, tell me one thing. They have also banned this Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, and they call it a banned outfit, a terrorist organization, perhaps. What I want to know, that over a period of time, this actual freedom struggle, because of the new narrative set by the West, has been converted into terrorism. Now, I think that is the main area to ponder about and to focus on. Vanessa, you want to comment on that, please?
You see, what I was telling to you, that it's a case, it's just a case of Yasin. All the leaders who have been arrested, who have been detained, and who are facing the charges under the and also sedition charges under the Act, and also they are facing the conspiracy against the state and all that. Facing the same charges. What India actually wants, this Yasin's an example for that. What I was telling the case, you see that Kashmir files, the case, the movie Kashmir files came to the public domain, and it was in India, and Indians started a hashtag Yasin. It was In that film, Yasin was one of the people, one of the persons who was portrayed as the killer of the Kashmiri Pandits. And he was the one who forced the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits.
And these are all fabricated charges put on him.
These
And
all
Wani Saab,
fabricated
now,
charges, and
if I may also talk to our friend who's sitting in the studio, if I may put this question to him. So now what? Do you think this particular NIA, which is the National Investigative Agency, Court of Delhi, can this verdict be challenged in the Supreme Court of India or something of that sort? Or is this the final authority? Whatever they have said, whatever they have awarded to Yasin Malik is going to remain the way it is.
I think it ought to be challenged by the apex court, but I think the better forum is not the Indian judiciary or Indian apex court, but some international forums, some international organizations. I think that efforts should be made to seek their intervention, because if we see the judicial history of India, when it comes to Muslims in general and Muslims in general,
this case could be taken to the International Court of Justice in Hague, and if somebody properly proceeds that, it is possible that this case could be sent there, and it should be settled on neutral grounds. The actual facts and figures should be presented. That's a possible case scenario, sir.
I think that should be, it should be taken to that forum and other, relevant forums. And for that, I propose that there should be some committee comprising of some leading lawyers which could pursue that case at this forum and other forums as well. Another the thing that I wanted to say, that was about the Indian judicial system, which is very important to understand, is, for example, if we look at the history of the case of Afzal Guru, if you see that case, and in 2001 after Parliament attack, that Afzal Guru was executed, and based on the same incident of Parliament attack, both forces, they came eyeball to eyeball, and they remained on the border for 10 months. Two nuclear powers, they remained on international border. So Arundhati Roy also edited a book in which she and other authors, they raised 13 questions on 13 December 2001 Parliament attack, and those questions are still unanswered. And that case, if you see the verdict of the Supreme Court,
talk about Mumbai attacks, that was an inside job. Whatever the Indian media has said is absolutely false, and they have involved Pakistan each and every time, though Pakistan said that, please, let's do inquiry. I mean, let's have a joint commission or something of that sort. And it should be proceeded that way, so that the facts, the real actual story should come out. Indians have never agreed, unfortunately. Now, Wani Saab, because we know that these days this issue of FATF, FATF, Pakistan is currently in the grey list. Again, that sword is hanging, and it has its own sort of an impact on so many levels, whether you talk about economic front or otherwise. Now, my point is, sir, this particular case that was in fact a fabricated case that was put on Yasin Malik. Interestingly, it says that he was involved in terror funding. Now, one forum is definitely the International Court of Justice. But since this issue has become so significant that countries are facing the heat, I mean, imagine UAE being in the grey list, or Turkey for that matter, just because they disagreed. So the West, now how can a certain level of pressure, because that's how it works, can actually be put on the Indian government to reconsider this case and sort of do something about it?
You see, we have seen almost whatever pressures we have been generating, awareness, whatever campaigns we have been running around the globe, though there is the pressure on government from the civil society, from the intellectuals around the globe, from the human rights activists, but unfortunately, the international governments, the big powers, are settled to condemn the India or to make India accountable of their crisis. That's why India becomes so arrogant to issue such decisions like that, which today they awarded Yasin the life sentence. So I think what Dr. Wasi was telling, that we need that Pakistan as a party to the dispute, because when you talked about FATF, Pakistan is a direct victim of that and of these allegations which India has been leveling. So Pakistan as a party to the dispute and as a supporter of Kashmir's right to self-determination on legal and political front will have to do its utmost in order what today's Prime Minister said, the ex-Prime Minister said, the Foreign Minister said. And I think these words should turn into practice, and I think there should be a greater campaign by the Parliament of Pakistan and by the diaspora people and the international organization in order to make some sort of change in the international mindset, in the international so that they could India and
All right. Now coming back to Dr. Owais bin Wasi Saab, one important factor, whenever you talk to the Hurriyat leaders, or you talk to the freedom fighters, or you talk to all those who are involved, the legitimate stakeholders for the very indigenous, homegrown movement for independence of the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. My point now is that Dr. Saab, tell us that the expectations from Pakistan, currently the political temperature is pretty high in Pakistan, as you know, but obviously things will settle down very soon. My question to you now is that we talk about the moral support, we talk about the diplomatic support, we talk about the political support. Now, in order to make sure that how to look after the real people for a very real cause, fighting for a separate homeland. Now, this case is in the United Nations. It's not something which could be related to terrorism. Don't you think that the other forum could be the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, as Wani Saab goes there regularly? This particular issue regarding human rights could be raised there. And also, another copy should be sent to New York, to the head of the Security Council, or perhaps the main man for the United Nations. Don't you think this is the kind of case that should be actually placed at that level?
Yes, you are right that in the current political situation in the country, this is very unfortunate that we are receiving these terrible news from Srinagar, and the situation in house is not in order, unfortunately, but I hope that it will be settled soon. But what we need to do is that you are right that in order to do that, I think that concerted and institutional efforts ought to be made. For example, that the first thing immediately that need to be done by the current regime is that there should be a conference of all ambassadors based in Islamabad, and those ambassadors must be briefed about this political motivated case against one of the leading freedom fighters who believes in non-violence, who believes in peaceful struggle, and who is the person who believes in the principles of democracy and principles of fair play. So I think that they should be briefed, those ambassadors, those envoys should be briefed. Second thing about the delegations. So instead of sending the delegations comprising the people who are not well versed, I think that we need to constitute delegations based on their expertise, that how well versed they are in terms of the understanding of the conflict, in terms of the understanding of the global dynamics, and also the legal dynamics, so that they can plead their case persuasively, quite convincingly. Only then I think we can sell this argument, and we can have some takers from the international community and from the international organization. Institutional effort should be made instead of making just stray efforts, which unfortunately
I totally agree with you, Dr. Saab. You're absolutely spot on. Wani Saab, do you think the Indians have chosen a right time to, in fact, convict Yasin Malik? Perhaps there is, as I mentioned, the political temperature in Pakistan is pretty high. There's a lot of chaos going on at the moment. Pakistan, as far as economy is concerned, is pretty weak. We all know that we are going through a certain phase. But having said that, there is another very important aspect. The whole world is busy covering the Ukrainian war. And most likely the Indian, the decision makers thought that this is the right time when the media is diverted towards another issue. So this could go unnoticed. Vanessa? Wani Saab, are you with us? Or if Wani Saab is not with us, Dr. Owais Saab, would you like to comment on this, please?
Could you please, pardon please, if you could.
Yeah, I was saying that the Indians, they have chosen a very particular time when the entire focus of the media, I'm talking about media, is totally towards Ukraine and Russia war. And even in Pakistan, the political situation isn't that great, along with the economic situation. So perhaps they really wanted that this particular conviction should go unnoticed.
Exactly. You know, the situation globally, the center of attention is, this Ukraine conflict, and the situation in Pakistan is also not very favorable. The timing is perhaps significant as the verdict that we are receiving at this point of time. But I think that if we can make some efforts, and if we can take these things proactively, I think these conflicts and this situation cannot subside our case, and the current verdict that we can highlight, we can bring it to the relevant forums, relevant authorities, relevant organization. I think there is always a room open for persuasion, for lobbying, for diplomatic influence that we can make. These issues are there, but I think that they cannot eclipse the thing that we are pursuing.
All right. Dr. Now we have also been joined in by our guest, Dr. Talat Shabbir Saab. Dr. Saab needs no introduction. He's the director, CPSC, ISSI. Dr. Saab, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for taking out your time and talking to us. Now, since we are talking about this very important issue regarding the conviction of Yasin Malik, Dr. Saab, I want your take. We had a word with Wani Saab, and right now we were also talking to Dr. Owais. But now my point is that even main Hurriyat leaders, Vice Farooq, also in fact issued his statement and condemned this. Your take, sir, how powerful the case of Yasin Malik is, how can it be handled, could be in fact advertised and told the entire world that this is what is happening in India. Justice is not taking place. They have a very biased judiciary under the influence of their establishment and military in particular, and obviously this Hindutva government that is in place. So this is absolutely wrong. Wrong charges were fabricated against him, and the man is convicted for no rhyme reason. Your take, Dr. Talat.
Thank you, Faisal. I think this is another black day in the judicial history of Hindustan, and where they have convicted a person who was innocent, and he was actually charged under fabricated charges. He had allegations which were fabricated, and he was charged under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and there were about 6 sections that were applied to him when charging him for the crime. So I think this is a black day in the judicial history, and besides that, world human rights organizations, Pakistan, and people who actually advance human rights cause, they have taken this seriously. This has actually created a kind of ripple, I think, not only in Pakistan but entire world. And the sentence was the news of the day, and I think the world is reacting to it, and saner world is reacting to it, and India is condemned as as a country where human rights are blatantly violated, and person like Yasin Malik.
That is Dr. Saab, a ritual in India. Forget about the human rights. Forget about democracy. Forget about the freedom of speech. India is in fact under the dictatorship of Narendra Modi. That is the most unfortunate part. Dr. Saab, one last quick comment before I wrap up.
I just wanted to mention that there is a realization in the human rights people who advance human rights causes that now I could quote, because you don't have time, I could quote many independent sources who have actually reported cases of torture, cases of enforced disappearances, pellet gun cases, and sexual violence cases in last 1 year, and many independent sources from the West have been quoted for these crimes against humans in occupied Kashmir. So I think the world has started to realize that Modi government is a fascist government. Modi government is actually is not something that can be related with democracy, human rights, and human values. I think there's a case. Yasin Malik's case is an ideal example where we can quote, and the world can quote, or the human rights activists can quote, that this is purely something that against the human rights of anyone. So I think India will stands to lose on this front. But I agree with you that since they are a fascist government, they have taken a stand. They actually want to sort out. Maybe they want to punish those voices in Kashmir who are looking for. Maybe they talk against occupation of India in Kashmir, but I think the Senate voices will be raised against fascist regime of India.
They will be raised, but I hope they should also be heard, because unfortunately, all, or rather most, let me put it this way, organizations who raise voice for human rights, their voices are always crushed. These sentiments are killed by the Indians. This is what the reality about Narendra Modi is, that this is what he's up to. And before I wrap up, I would like to thank both my guests and also Mr. Wani, who earlier joined us in the show. Thank you very much, sir, for your participation. Even the DG ISPR today in his tweet very categorically condemned this particular decision taken by the court. But at the end of the day, Yasin Malik is an innocent man. This is the reality. He is not a terrorist. He is a freedom fighter fighting for his own land, which was occupied forcefully by the Indian military. And the truth is that about 1 million men in uniform of India are in the Jammu and Kashmir region and controlling around 90 lakh people. So you can well imagine what sort of a situation is that. It's a living hell. That is what the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is all about. But anyway, thank you very much for watching the show. I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.